Hey, what's going on everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be addressing another issue on the Buick Enclave. Yes, there's been a lot of stuff going wrong with it. Replaced the power steering pump and ended up, it worked, but now it's the rack and pinion. So if you're driving down the road and you go to turn and your hand just starts jerking back and forth, the steering isn't smooth, and you've already replaced your power steering pump, next step is your rack and pinion. I don't have any air in my lines. I double checked that, jacked the front end up, locked the lock at least 20 to 30 times. There's no air, so we've got a new rack and pinion coming today, so I'm going to start disassembling it right now. So when we cut to it, I'm going to have it lifted up on jack stands and the front wheels and tires off. So we'll fast forward to that point. Alright, so as you can see, she's all jacked up and everything, and what I did is I loosened up this bolt. It's part of the frame. Yes, I do have a jack underneath it, floor jack. Then on the other side, right in front of that stand, you can see that bolt, it's down as well. Did that a little bit. Now what I need to do, so that's an 11/16, I believe it was. 13/16 for this main bolt. And then for the smaller bolts on the top that go along this bracket, you're looking at a 15. So you need to make sure you take the 15 all the way off. Or what you'll do is when you start lowering the whole subframe, you're gonna end up bending this whole bracket. And once you bend that bracket right here, you'll have to go buy a new one. So just take out the 15 mil bolt that holds it on right here. And then what I did is I still have about 1 inch of thread onto this, so I'm not gonna unthread it all the way. And I'll do the exact same thing to the other side. And then when it comes to the front, you're gonna wanna loosen up the front as well. So I mean, same thing, 13/16 for the big one, and then a 15 mil for these other two. So you're gonna wanna loosen up these two. You can loosen them up all the way if you want to, because it's not actually holding the car on, or the motor. But it's just this one big bolt. So you want to loosen it a little bit so that way the whole subframe right here can tilt down, so you can actually get your power steering, the rack and pinion, out through your driver's side fender. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen up that other side and take off these 15 mil bolts, and then I'll get right back to you. Alright, so I do want to go over one thing real quick. Make sure you do have a jack or a floor jack underneath your subframe, because these rear bolts, they will have to be taken out pretty much all the way. So the only thing that will be supporting your whole weight of your motor on the back end of it is your jack. And remember, your front ones, all you have to do is just loosen up that main bolt and then loosen up these as well. So just keep that in mind. Keep the front ones, just loosen the front ones, and the back ones will have to come out all the way. So just make sure you do have your subframe supported and it does not fall, because it will damage other components inside, such as electrical and all that other fun stuff. So that's it. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off these tie rod bolts. The 11/16 works great, but I just don't have, or a 13/16, sorry, that'll fit right on there. I don't have one, so I'm just going to old school crescent wrench. I'm going to take off both sides. And then with a hammer, you're gonna tap it along the side of this knuckle and it'll pop up your tie rod. So this is your outer tie rod, and right in here is gonna be your inner. So once you get this bolt loosened up, taken off, you're gonna hit this knuckle with a hammer and it'll pop right up. And do that to both sides. All right, I kind of want to show you what I was doing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give this knuckle a few taps. Should loosen it up enough. So I know it's loud on there, but if you hit that knuckle, it will pop it loose. And then you can take your tie rod out. And now is the perfect time, if you need to, replace your tie rod ends, because you will have to do an alignment after this, no matter what. So now what I'll do is I'm gonna unthread this outer tie rod. And what I'm gonna do is get in there and get to those bolts. So I got one on the back of here, and there's going to be a couple on the other side. So that's what I'm going to do next. Alright, so right now we're underneath the car. As you can see, there's the rack and pinion, there's your steering, and your rack and pinion is going to be on the other side of this frame. Right there, you're gonna have, I believe they're 15/16 bolts. Right there, those two. And then to get to the other ones, we're gonna have to take off this little cover. You're gonna find a 10 mil bolt right there. And then, there's, oh, right up here. Then a 10 mil right there. Then we can take off that cover, and then it'll allow you access to the other two bolts. Once we get those loosened up, I'm gonna remove this boot, move it up, disconnect that steering shaft, and then disconnect my power steering line going into the rack and pinion and then out. And once I do that, I will be able to slide the whole rack and pinion out. Alright, so these other bolts are going to be kind of difficult to get to. And you can see the top of the rack and pinion. There's that other bolt. And you can see the nut on the other side. And then there's one up on top as well. So those are the ones that we're going to have to take out. And that's going to be interesting to get to. So I'm going to work on trying to figure out how I'm going to get those out. And these other ones won't be as bad, they're right in the open, but this has the exhaust right in the way. All right, so to get to this bolt, I believe it's a 19, and I had to use, well, it's really hard to get in here. You can only get one hand in here, so that's why I'm trying to film it. Okay, you can see I have my socket, the wobbly, and a small extension with a bigger one. And looks like it's an 18 mil. And that's what your other two bolts are going to be on the passenger side. And you can see right now I got it right in front of the U-shape for the exhaust. There's your transfer case. But it's slow working. Just thought I'd show you guys what I'm doing to get it off. And then as far as the top one, I'm not sure I'm gonna get to that one either. So once I figure out my method, I'll give you guys a shot. But I'd love to film every little thing I'm doing, except for, as you can see, underneath the car, I have no room. And I'm fighting between jack stands, tires, a jack itself, floor jack. So, okay, once I get this bolt off, I'm gonna get to the top one and I will go from there. All right. So as you can see, what I did is in between the drive shaft, the front drive shaft, or the rear, sorry, in between this flex pipe, that's where you're gonna stick your hand in through, and then you can see See if you can see that. It's really hard to tell. There we go. You can see my ratchet right there going back and forth. And then also right here, you can see my hand. I actually have it sticking through the fender where your tire would go. So on the inside, I'm holding the top of the ratchet. I'm helping loosen it that way, plus sticking my hand in through here to get that first initial bite off of it, because it's going to have quite a bit of tension onto it. So just do that for the top bolt. And to get to these bolts, there is going to be another guard, and you can see that right there. And what it's going to do is there's going to be a 10 mil bolt right on top of this subframe, and there's two of them. So just look for those two. You'll see this little pan right there. It'll have an ABS sensor or an O2 sensor line hooked up to it. You'll be able to see that from inside the passenger side fender, just behind the hub assembly and everything. Look in between the frame and the subframe, you'll see the little connectors. You'll have to disconnect the O2 sensor from that. So, all right, I'm gonna continue taking this off. All right, for this top bolt, I'm using a crescent wrench on the top nut. I have it secured against the side of the body. No, it is not bending any of those brake lines or anything like that. If that's what that is, I doubt it. Yes, it is. All right, so it's not hitting any of those brake lines. Just resting right by it. Got the crescent wrench on the top nut. I had to use a big breaker bar just to break it loose. All right, so this is where I've gotten so far. I ended up taking off that 11 millimeter bolt, and as you can see, I slid it off to the side. And I got these 15/16 bolts out, as you've seen before. Now what I'm working on is getting that 10 millimeter out, and then I'm gonna pull these two lines out. One's for your feed, and then the other one's gonna be for your turn. And then I'm gonna slide the whole rack and pinion out. So this part's gonna get a little messy, so I won't film it, but yeah, as soon as I take that bracket off, I should be able to get to everything I need to pull it out. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is disconnect that electrical connection, and then I'm gonna start sliding this whole thing out. So I just gotta be careful I don't ruin any of the power steering lines, because I really don't wanna have to replace them, but we'll go from there. All right, guys, so when you're underneath there, you get everything disconnected. What you're gonna do is you're gonna lift that rack and pinion up. So you're gonna push it up, and as you push it up, you're gonna tilt the rack and pinion towards your transmission, and this is your steering gear. And once you do that, as you can see, it flops right down. You got to make sure that you don't get any of your power steering lines. You have your line already disconnected. And then I will use two hands, but you will be able to maneuver it on out. I'm going to get underneath and get the other bolt. But we'll be able to slide it right out of here. And as you can see, you are going to make a mess. I tried catching some of it. Didn't really work, but yep. So I'm gonna climb underneath and lift that passenger side up and slide it on out. All right, so there it is. And you can see this is the return right here. That's gonna be your return line. Your feed line I have tucked up in there. I don't know if you can see it up there. And then here's your electrical connector. So when you do take this off, you got this little spring. You got to take this spring out, and then it'll pull right out. But there's going to be two different types of rack and pinions. So from your engine bay, you will be able to see this top portion. And if you see that you have this little box right here with an electrical connector to it, I believe it's called the NV7 is the one that you want. I will double check on that, but there are two different kinds. So make sure you get the correct kind for your vehicle. And easy way to tell is with this electrical connection. The new one I got, like I'll have to take this piece off of it. So undo these 4 Allen bolts, pull it out, put it on the new one. But just make sure you either have this unit on or it's just going to be plain. There's just going to be a cylinder and that's it. But before you even do all that, you'll be able to get in here with the flashlight. You can look on down and you'll be able to see your rack and pinion to determine whether it's the NV7 or not. So now we just got to wait for the rack and pinion to show up. Thank gosh we went with FedEx. That's a joke. All right. All right, guys, so FedEx took another day, few days. It was supposed to arrive on Saturday. It's now Tuesday around noon. So I'm gonna be putting this rack and pinion in. So I'm not gonna film this portion of it. It'll just be the same way that it came out. All right, guys, so ended up getting it in. The reason why I didn't do the whole install is it'll be the same way as taking it out. So just take your time. It is kind of a nightmare to get it in. So just be patient and take your time. And it may take you a half hour just to try and get it in, but once you do, it's not too bad. That's it. And if you want to check out one of my other videos, I kind of go through how I bleed the entire system, flushing it. But for this round, I just put a funnel on the top. I filled the reservoir all the way up and then filled the funnel up, started it, let it run for a couple seconds, shut it off, refilled the reservoir, and I was good to go. And then while it was lifted in the air, I cycled the steering about 20 to 30 times to try and bleed out all the air. And now it's working like a champ. Just got it back from the alignment shop and it is driving better than ever. So I highly recommend you guys do this on your own. It may take some time, but it's well worth it. It will save you thousands of dollars. Check out my other videos on the Buick Enclave if this interests you. I know this will work with the GMC Acadias and a couple of the other Chevy SUVs that are like this. So thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it. Remember, subscribe to the channel. Help me out. We made the milestone with 1,000 subscribers, so let's keep this rolling. All right, thank you guys.